Like many of you, Greg and I were very curious about what was really happening on our southern border and how we as Presbyterians could be proactive here in the United States, or if it required to go abroad. We enrolled in a travel study seminar through the Presbyterian Peacemaking Program and the Pacific Presbytery to try and get some answers for ourselves.
We met up with 24 people from all over the country, from Oregon, Washington State, California, Kentucky, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Linda and I from North Carolina. A total of 26 people.
Our leaders had decided that it would be easier for us to cross on foot to go into Tijuana, so we got on a chartered bus early Saturday morning and headed down to Tijuana, gathered our luggage off the bus, and walked across to the other side. Guillermo is a wonderful human being, so warm and friendly and full of all kinds of information for us. He is also one of the pastors at the Border Church, and he was so insightful and helpful throughout our whole time in Mexico.
Our first stop after we crossed the border in Tijuana was at a women and children's shelter. They treated us very well, gave us food, kind of gave us an introduction about what we were going to be doing for the next couple of days, and then also explained about that shelter.
Listening to stories from these mothers, you begin to realize how heartbreaking it is to leave your own country. And it's difficult as Americans to grasp, I think, the incredible violence that these folks are fleeing from. And even more difficult to understand how dangerous it was to bring children with them on this journey, but the only answer they knew to escape the terror of their home communities, traveling for weeks to get to a place where they could seek asylum, somewhere that would be safe.
After leaving the first shelter en route to the next shelter, we saw the magnitude of the wall that separated the United States and Mexico, and words cannot describe this mammoth thing that went across the countryside.
On our way to visit a new shelter, we traveled through Scorpion Canyon, a dry riverbed in a muddy field with rocky terrain, and a very nervous group of passengers on a bus wondering how in the world we would ever get out and how we would turn around. But we did make it through. There is no paved roads anywhere around, and it reminded us much of our time in Haiti.
The homes and the people that were in Scorpion Canyon received all the trash from the homes that were up on the mountaintops above, and rain would wash all this debris down, and the streets were full of trash.
We then visited Ambassadors of Christ and met Pastor Gustavo and his wife, who then shared how their ministry began 4 years ago with a Haitian caravan in 2016. They brought in 3 families, and they had no idea how big it would become when they opened their doors to refugees seeking asylum. After the Haitians came, then Mexicans came fleeing violence in their country. They have had a dream of housing people who want to stay in Tijuana, and they hope to build there, but they also have many Central American refugees coming. Since the cultures were very different between Haiti and Central America, they decided to form 2 different homes so that Haitians could have their own culture and Central Americans could have theirs.
When we drove into Scorpion Canyon, I was not expecting to see a church that was as nice on the inside as it was. There were kids running around. The building was clean. It just seemed to be a very peaceful place for me. Most of the families were from Central America, while some were seeking asylum from even Mexico. But as we walked in, we noticed tents. And then we noticed another room full of tents. And I counted at least 50 tents that these families were living in, waiting to seek asylum into the United States. We felt like we were walking into these people's homes. We noticed that there were bags that were set aside and asked what the bags were for. And they told us that the washing machine, they would burn up, and so they had no washing machine, and they needed an industrial size washing machine, and they were hand washing all their clothes outside. Here are the blankets that they stuffed in trash bags because they didn't want to throw them away, but didn't know what to do with them since they didn't have a washing machine that would hold up. While we were there in the shelter, a couple had just arrived, and the wife had 2 children that were twins, and the husband had been sick, and no telling how long they had been traveling to get to Tijuana to cross over the border.
The pastor's wife informed us that as many as 900 meals a day have been served here. Some people have lived here as long as 3 years, and that families help coordinate to make teams that help clean and coordinate cooking. They also have created hygiene kits and a clothing store for new people that are coming in. The neighborhood at first was a little hesitant about them starting this asylum ministry, but have warmed up to it greatly. The neighborhood has actually benefited from the asylum seekers being here in this community, as these little businesses and stores have popped up throughout the community. It has given them more opportunity for business, and also local industry has been able to hire people as day wage earners, and that has also helped both sides. Our second day in Tijuana consisted of us still trying to understand the impact of migration and immigration, and we knew that we were going to be involved in participating in a border church, but we weren't really sure what to expect. Early Sunday morning, several of the group helped Tracy King Ortega, the Presbyterian World Missions Liaison for Central America, and Guillermo Navarrete, who is the coordinator of the Mexican side of the church, border church, to go shopping for supplies to help feed lunch to asylum seekers hoping to enter the United States and for other guests. A delicious lunch was prepared using some of the herbs that are grown there on the garden side of the Mexican side of the wall, cilantro and onions and garlic, and what we had purchased at the store, tomatoes and turkey ham and fresh baked bread, some fresh Mexican cheese, refried beans, and a wonderful lunch was prepared, and there was enough for everyone there to have a sandwich. As Greg and I were walking down to the ocean following the wall prior to the church service, we came across this list of names and kind of questioned what were the names for and why did some of them say RIP and who were these men. So I decided to ask one of the guys working in the border church for more answers. So as some members of our group went to work putting sandwiches together, I decided to find the guy with the green shirt on that talked about deported U.S. military veterans. His name was Hector Lopez, and he was a Army veteran and the group's director of the Unified U.S. Deported Veterans. I got to hear his story, and what had happened to him. Hector told me of the plight of many of the people's names listed on the wall that I had asked him about, and also about his own plight. He said that when he and his family moved to the United States, he was 3 years old. He was told after high school that if he enrolled in the Army, he would earn citizenship through his 6 years of service. But like dozens of others, he was deported and is now living in Mexico, fighting to come back. Hector has been deported, and he, like dozens of others, are now living in Mexico, fighting to be repatriated. Many of the ironies that exist are that these other veterans and deportees still receive veteran benefits. And the biggest irony for me was that he told me the only way he could go back to the United States was if he died, then he would be allowed a burial with full military honors.
I learned something while I was in Mexico. I learned that if the United States flag is hung upside down, it means that the veterans are in distress. In this situation, people who were from different countries were veterans in the United States, then were deported, so now they're in distress.
I wanted to describe to you the wall. Here you can see a city about 10 miles north of the border in the U.S. The wall is constructed of like 6 by 6 posts that are 20 feet tall, and at the beach here they put another extension on top of the wall to make it difficult for people to climb over.
Es hora de adorarle. Ven, abre tu corazón a él. Ven, Señor, estamos en este lugar.
And because of you, Father, we are here in this place.
Estamos protegidos por tu mano.
We are protected by your hand.
Y nuevamente has detenido la lluvia
And again, you have stopped the rain.
para que nuestros amigos y nosotros podamos disfrutar de este tiempo.
So our friends and ourselves can enjoy this time here with you.
En Cristo nuestro Señor te entregamos este momento
In Jesus' name, we put this time in your hand.
para tu honra y tu gloria.
For your honor.
So let's move to Nicodemus.
Así es que vamos a hablar de Nicodemio.
For those of you who call this your church and you're here every week, it's good to see you again.
Para esos que llaman esto su iglesia, es una bendición verlos aquí de nuevo el día de hoy.
For those of you who are visiting, I understand we have a number of Presbyterians who are here visiting with us.
Esos que vienen de visita, sabemos que hay una cantidad muy fuerte de la iglesia presbiteria. Está con grupos de la
We were very lucky and privileged to get to hear the Reverend Brian Parcell share to us some teachings about Nicodemus. And he talked about how Nicodemus went to Jesus and said, is there anything that can keep me from inheriting the kingdom of God? And Jesus said to Nicodemus, you must be born again, and you need to be born of the Spirit and surrender anything that separates you from God. So while the Reverend Brian Parcell was preaching about Nicodemus and the possibilities of items and things in our lives that can separate us from God, he reminded us again that Jesus said, if you carry anything with you that divides you from one another, it is not of God. It was kind of hard to miss that irony of this gigantic wall in the background as he preached. And as we stared and looked at the wall, we were reminded again that whenever we gather at this place, at this wall, it is impossible for us not to understand the ways in which as humans we have come to separate one from another. Parcell said, anything, including this wall, that separates one from another is not of God. I was really grateful to hear Brian, the pastor of First United Methodist Church in California, preach. After communion, Worship songs such as I Could Sing of Your Love Forever and I Surrender All played, and a group of us was asked to come lay hands on a young woman whose asylum hearing was scheduled for Monday. We as participants in the service were asked to come forward to lay hands on the fence and to, quote, convert this wall into an altar to God where we can bring our prayers to God, asking forgiveness for wrong decisions taken by society and wrong decisions taken by the government, the speaker said. When it came time to do the passing of the peace for our service, participants linked pinky fingers, signifying the only physical connection they could have through the fence when people from the United States were allowed to come up to do it. This was a very moving experience, and we got to share many pinky kisses with our brothers and sisters on the Mexican side. At Friendship Park, which is straddling the U.S. and Mexico border between San Diego, California, and Tijuana, families do have a chance to sometimes see each other, although they're separated from this well-fortified fence. The park was initially inaugurated by First Lady Pat Nixon back in 1971, and she had hoped that it wouldn't be there too long, but now, decades later, it's the only place where visitors have been allowed to see each other every Saturday and Sunday. Friendship Park is a place where families that were not allowed to see each other could at least meet on Saturdays and Sundays. They created a space, half circles at binational circles, in 2007 so people could meet and grow food between each other. This is the side on the U.S. Side, which was totally bulldozed in January of 2018. So only the Mexican side has vegetation. It is a strange place to visit, such beauty and yet such desolation and separation and isolation from people that love one another.
This portion of the wall in Tijuana is the only place in Southern California that you can come and access the Mexican wall, and there's also a wall on the U.S. side, and the families can come and stick their finger through the wall and touch a relative. Words cannot describe this wall that went all the way down into the ocean. People can swim around it, but then as soon as they swim around it, the Border Patrol from the U.S. side is there to get them.
Amongst many things, the Border Patrol has this tower with cameras all over it. They have Jeeps, they got ATVs, they got personnel, just in case somebody crosses the wall.
Friendship Park is a place where separated families often meet on Saturdays and Sundays, but on this particular Sunday, the United States side of the park was closed, so participants in the church could not come and share services with us. There was a group of Loyola Marymount students that met up on a hill, and they were connected to us with a loudspeaker. Most days on Sundays, a group of at least 20 to 50 people will gather.
I'm grateful that we had this experience with other Presbyterians and had more questions when we came back than when we were there.
One of our questions is, what do people of faith, what can we do? What can we do to help? Some of the answers we received were call your congregational people, don't send postcards or emails, call, donate money to this work.
is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know, oh yes I know.